Today we're going to be looking at a brand new project, just set foot on this property. We're going to dive back in the timber, see what quality of timber he has, what kind of return he's going to get on this harvest, as well as what we can do to actually improve this property for whitetail hunting in the future. Let's go. Welcome back to another video, guys. We are on a brand new property down here in Southern Ohio. The client just closed on this piece, and basically, he's looking at it as a hunting property, but he also is looking at it from an investment standpoint. What can he get out of the timber to offset his, down payment and his cost on this property? Like I said, he's primarily using it as a hunting property. And so, we're going to approach this harvest a little bit different than we might for somebody looking simply for timber production long term. We're going to be looking at it from several standpoints as far as what can we do to actually improve the hunting, where can we strategically place some of these bedding cuts, as well as, typically on a project like this, we're leaving quite a bit of white oak and some red oaks and stuff for browse for the deer. And so it's just a different mindset going into a harvest like this. So he contacted me a couple weeks ago, and we just got down here on the property now that he closed. We're checking it out for this initial walkthrough. We'll see what he has here, if it makes sense to do a cut even. I'm trying to, I try to be as transparent with my clients as at all possible and never want to push them into a scenario that doesn't make sense for them. So today's project is simply to assess the timber quality, potential timber value there, and what can be done to this property to make it better. So for these initial walkthroughs, kind of what I'm looking at to place a rough value of timber on this property is we're going to look at how many acres have marketable timber in them. So using Onyx, I'm mapping out on Onyx what looks to be marketable timber in those areas, and try and weed out any open areas, any areas that looks like it has no value. And I'm walking through an area right here, you can kind of see over my shoulder, it's a lot of real thick nasty stuff, a lot of immature hard maples and poplars and just young timber that isn't ready to be harvested. And up front here, really we don't want to create more cover anyways, where deer are going to be bedded, because this is going to be a lot of his access. And an interesting thing on this property right off the bat is when I took the drone up to get some of the shots, was able to kind of see where some of the deer were bedded, and the main group of bucks was actually bedded right up here, right along his main access. And so that's something we're going to have to address in this cut is, can we manipulate this property to a point to where the deer naturally want to bed at a spot that's going to give us better options for getting to some of these spots to actually kill them. So I'm up here on this point where I videoed a few bucks together, and they are set up right here on a point overlooking the main access to this entire farm. I see this often. Walking in here though, never heard them leave. Never would have known there was bucks bedded here. And these deer are going to be really tough to kill if they know you're in the woods. So, that's something we'll need to address and figure out a game plan, an alternate route of access, as well as changing some of the structure of the timber to hopefully encourage bedding in other spots that are less desirable for them, because it's going to be pretty tough to kill the best deer in this property when he's set up at a spot where he knows you're going to be entering this property and he knows when you're here. So yeah, that's going to be a hurdle. This property is not easy to access. You're coming in from the west, and you've got some of your main food sources that you're hunting, towards the middle of the property. It makes it tough to get to. So a lot of work has already been put into this property, putting in this access road and the food plots and stuff. But some of those things may need to be adjusted just to make this actually huntable without spooking all of these deer off accessing the property. But while we're here, it's shed season, so we'll see if we can pick a few up while we're doing this cruise. But I am looking at, you know, as I walk through these sections where there's mature timber, at how many board feet per acre I believe there's going to be in those sections, and just get some averages. And you kind of put that across how many acres I believe there to be mature timber, and that gives me a rough number. It's not precise, and I try to be on the low side just to, you know, not set too high expectations for the client. But it gives you at least a starting point. And then, you know, if it's something he wants to move forward with, I come in here, mark each individual tree. You have a full breakdown, number of trees, board feet, the species breakdown, everything. And for this client, he just bought it. He's not going to pay any taxes on the sale. We're going to be able to do a timber tax basis, separating the value of the timber from the land, creating a zero gain on this cut. And, you know, I'm not sure how much is going to be here, but that, you know, I've had clients cut up to $250,000 of timber and not have to pay a dime in taxes on that sale, which is incredible. So sets them up really well here. It's a good property. It looks like it does have some timber, so I'm excited. Right off the bat, I'm seeing a fair amount of white oak, which is good. That's primarily what's driving the market right now here in Ohio, and really, you know, across the nation. That market is still really strong, and yeah, there's some good trees in here. You know, the maturity isn't, say, at its peak. You know, if you were looking at it from a timber standpoint, there's definitely a lot of timber here that we can cut now. You know, he'll definitely get a good chunk of timber money from this just off the bat that I can see already. But, you know, depending what your goals were, I might tell you to wait a little bit if it's not something that you needed right away. But because this is a hunting property first and foremost, I'm definitely going to recommend a harvest, because there's a good chunk of pretty mature timber here, and I'm seeing a lot of 20, 22 inch trees. There is a lot of young timber, a lot of good young white oaks coming in. Love to see that. And there is, you know, a decent amount of browse, because it has been harvested in the past. I would, if I had to guess, 15, 20 years ago, be my guess. And they did it relatively selectively. And, you know, it definitely has a little bit more low-grade timber in it, meaning beech, some maples, that type of timber, soft maple. So we are going to be, you know, cutting that fairly aggressively to try and get that balance back a little bit. If you're not aggressive enough on those trees, they can take over woods. So you never want to just come in, take out the good timber, leave the junk. It's just not great management practices. So those are some of the things I'm looking at. But so for what I'm seeing, definitely some timber value. So like it. So I've walked a good bit of this property now, and unfortunately a large section of it doesn't really have any marketable timber in it. It's a lot of, you know, young poplars, and you know, was cut really hard in the past. So, you know, it looks like somebody kind of went over the top, took the timber off the ridge and stuff, and let it grow back. So, you know, there's quite a bit of timber that really doesn't, or area that doesn't really have anything in it. Not done yet, so we'll need to see what the rest of it looks like, but I'm hoping there's gonna be enough that it makes sense to do. But ultimately, I'm gonna advise my client on what's best for the property, even if it means that, you know, I don't get a job. So it's all right. We'll keep walking and see what we find. Well, we made it back to the truck. So, you know, we walked through the entire property, just did basically a big loop, and I'm able to get a pretty good feel for the makeup of the timber and how many acres, you know, look like they would have mature timber in it. On this one here, out of the 150, 60 acres roughly, I think probably around 40, 45 acres would have, you know, marketable timber in it. It's, you know, it's something that could be cut. I'm guessing between around 100,000 board feet on that 40 acres if you did somewhat aggressive select cut. The makeup of the timber, you know, is heavy to white oak, which is really good. But, you know, simply looking at it from a hunting perspective, it's not necessary to cut it. It wouldn't move the needle that much on this property. He's got so many areas that have good browse, good bedding cover already, that cutting that 40 acres doesn't make that big a difference in the end for him. So, you know, I don't know what this particular client's going to decide what to do on this. He may or may not, you know, move forward with it. But, you know, we are going to get a basis done on this. So that way in the future, you know, when he does harvest it, say it's 5-10 years from now, that's going to significantly cut back on any gain he would have on the timber portion, resulting in, you know, a lot less spent on taxes on that sale then. So at the very least, we'll do that, get that established, and, you know, wait to hear back on the client whether or not he wants to move forward with a cut. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Hope you learned something, kind of what a timber buyer potentially is looking for. You know, like I said, there's big areas where it's just a lot of, you know, 6 to 12 inch poplars and just low grade timber. And it's not even so much that it's low grade, it's just the size of it's just not ready. So you would, if you wanted to cut that, you'd essentially be cutting it a clear cut for a paper, which is just doesn't make much sense in most scenarios. Down south, another story, but up here, the market is very different. And generally speaking, I don't recommend that. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. We'll catch you in the next one.